guest. He's a man who is a fearless campaigner, documentary maker and an all-round thorn in the side of the British establishment, asking the questions they don't want to hear and the questions they certainly don't want to answer. It's an honour to welcome Bill Maloney to the Tony Legend Show. Bill, welcome.
Thank you very much, Tony. Tony, can I just, hello everyone, can I just say to all victims of any kind of institutional abuse and all abuse victims out there, I'd just like to say hello and tune in.
Well, I know we've got a lot of listeners tonight. The show's been kind of snowballing every week, and there's a lot of excitement about you coming on the show tonight, so it's great to have you.
Right. Well, that's very nice. I've done a lot of interviews. I've done hundreds of interviews, Tony, and this is the first one I'm pacing up and down here like a fucking lion, because I said to my producer, Maria, I said that all the different interviews, whether it's been on TV, whether it's been on radio, whether it's been in the media, I handle it. It's good. I enjoy it. But tonight, I'm going to enjoy it tonight. But tonight, I'm talking about abuse victims, institutional abuse victims, and paedophile rings that are still operating in this country now.
Indeed. For listeners, we'll start at the beginning. For people who don't know much about you, please fill us in. Who is Bill Maloney, and why does he do what he does?
Well, Bill Maloney was born to Irish parents who came over in the 50s. I was born in 1956. My father was from Dublin and my mother was from County Wexford. Both of them have passed on, God rest their souls. Both of them, my father was put into a place called Haut, which some of you may have heard of. It was run by the brothers, I think, in Ireland somewhere. And my mother was right through the institutions, and we were all taken off of her. There was 8 children, and when they came over here, as we were babies, my mother was having babies, they were taken, we were taken straight into care. So by the time I was 20, I spent 14 years in different care institutions in this country, and my whole family were decimated by it. And my sister took her own life, my sister Diana, my brother Peter, and my mother. And my mother wound up in a mental institution at the end of the day because, it chokes me up a little bit, sorry. The Irish came over here and through their ignorance of education and not a natural ignorance like we were told, when you go back to the way it was when we first came over here, you were like stupid Nick fuckers and things like that, the same as the blacks got it as well. That's why the Irish and the blacks seem to gel in London, So I spent a lot of time, and my whole family was decimated. There was 8 of us, and some are living, some aren't, but there's not many of us left. So, I had a tough life up till I was 20, and then I became a hod carrier, and I was a hod carrier for 20 years. So I carried bricks on my shoulder for 20 years. Then I met Maria, I got married, I had a child, I'm sorry, but this is choking me up. I'm not normally like this. Because I had to go back on... I came forward as an abuse victim when I started making Adam Rickwood and the Medhamsley Heroes, which is about a young offenders institution, where young Adam Rickwood was found hanging in his cell. Bearing in mind he was on suicide watch at the time, and he was found hanging, and he had a broken nose and a broken wrist, and there's now a second inquest, which is supposed to be a criminal one, because the restraining techniques were unlawful. So I went into the film game, started writing, and I made a film called Lunatic, and then I made another one called The Blunderers, and they've done very well. They were dramatic features, black comedy. But even The Lunatic culminated in the main character in actually killing a paedophile at the end. And then I went over to New York because the Lunatic was there represented at the New York International Film and Video Festival, and it won Best International Feature. But while I was in New York and all the other filmmakers were up in Manhattan ramming it up their noses, I took my unbelievably courageous camera woman, Lily Starr, onto the streets of Harlem, and I started shooting documentary of the poor people, the blacks, the Hispanics, the poor people. when I came back from there, I went over to Jersey to investigate that in a working class manner. And when, you know, what's pissing me off at the moment is, Tone, the middle classes are saying, well, what does working class mean? We're working class. They fucking know what working class means. Working class means the lower classes. And this government promised £3.4 billion to get 3 million children above the poverty line in this country, and they promised that 13 years ago. Now, we all know that poverty breeds violent crime, dysfunctional families, etc., etc. Now, they still haven't had their £3.4 billion, 13 years on. And the bankers have just had 840 billion from this country. So the bonuses are just one bank would get every child in this country above the poverty line. And all these children that are going into these institutions, young offenders institutions, care homes, foster homes, are 99% from the lower classes. So for anyone out there listening who didn't know what the lower classes were, that's what they are.
And let's get into a minute for, if you don't mind, the Question Time incident recently. The headline read, Dimbleby rocked by questions of paedophilia and murder. Now, you were escorted out of Question Time, and I've just said the word question 4 times in 2 sentences. There are so many questions, so little answers. Tell us about what you were drawing attention to when you rocked Dimbleby.
Well, I'm just trying to chill out myself at the moment, actually, you know, because I do get very angry about what's going on in this country, and you know, has been for many years, and around Europe and all over the world. But David Dimbleby, when we first went there, they took us all into what was the equivalent of the green room at the BBC, and so there was about 150 of us plus in there, and then David Dimbleby came in, went up to the front, and started talking on a mic, and he was saying that, you know, you can't do this, you can do that, you can't do this, you can do that. And then he said, and we're going to pick 5 questions. And then I shouted, David, I said, are you telling me that out of all these people here, at this historical moment that you're talking about, you're going to take 5 questions out of, and then decide what ones you want to ask? I said, surely we can have an open debate. This is supposed to be a democracy. What about asking a question and then debating the question? So I said, because I have a question, I would like to know why Gordon Brown hasn't given the 3.4 million children their 3.4 billion pounds to get them out of poverty. And he said, well, that's a good question. So I said, yeah, I said that, and I would also like to know why. And this is the one that I want everyone to get on. Why is the age of consent at the Pope's Vatican City just 12, the lowest in Europe? Now, I don't give a fuck how the Pope wants to explain that. I asked the priest a short while ago, I've asked lots of priests. The last one I asked, he said, well, we believe that a 12-year-old can have a loving relationship, blah, 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 blah. And I said, that's wrong, that is fucking nonsense, mate. And I cannot understand that. And it is the simple things sometimes that make a difference. For example, when I shot Sunsea and Satan, which was investigating Haut de la Garenne on the island of Jersey. Now, 1 mile from Haut de la Garenne, Tone, while this investigation was in its full flow, I discovered on the main drag that went past Haut de la Garenne, just 1 mile away, and we timed it at 30 miles an hour. It took me 2 minutes and 20 seconds to drive from this house, their most opulent house, and there were 2 paedophilic dolls outside in the front garden where everyone could see who drove past, and the police had to drive past every day. One of those paedophilic statues was of a kid bending down, a stone kid sucking a cock. Next to that kid, there was a plastic doll of another kid who was naked, turned round, he was about 2 foot high, holding his prick with a toothless grin on his face. 1 mile from Haut de la Garenne.
Well, we're going to play your trailer for that Sun, Sea and Satan in a moment, but just getting back to what you were saying about the Vatican and your questions, which you didn't really get to ask at Question Time. In light of everything we know about paedophilia and the Vatican, how can they defend having the age of sexual consent at only 12, meaning it's legal?
Tony, it doesn't seem to be going out there. That's what I'm punching for at the moment. And I would like, you know, it's like all these people, everyone listening to your programme are listening to your programme because they are decent people. And I want decent people to do something. And I want these people to go to everyone they can and ask this question. Bill Maloney wants to know why you can fuck a kid at 12 in the Vatican City. That's what I want to know. And open it up properly. And people say, oh, it's a bit dramatic and he's a bit crude. Well, it is very crude. As I say to all the victims that I talk to, when you're being fucked up the arse and sadomasochistically tortured, Tone, that is dramatic.
And if people get offended by the language, there's no more offended than they should be by what you're saying.
Sorry about that.
No, well, I'm just saying. I just mean that you know, people.
If we're going to stop swearing, Tone, we better start with the army. We better get the police. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but no, that's not really the point I'm making. What I was saying was, you know, people should be worked up about the fact that there's 12-year-olds having sex in the Vatican, not about whether you say bad words or not.
Well, what do you think of that, Tone? How is it?
It's unbelievable. It doesn't surprise me knowing what you know about the Vatican and stuff. But I mean, it's still shocking, isn't it?
Well, I think it's absolutely outrageous. It's absolutely, and what about, you know, what I'm doing, I'm trying to give the audience, what I'm trying to say to you all is that this goes to very high places. I'm talking about very high places. I have a reliable witness on the island of Jersey, right? I can't say who it is, but she said to me, the Queen Mother used to bounce me up and down on her knee, Billy, if you know what I mean. The Crown owns that island, not the UK. The Queen owns the island of Jersey. There are 90,000 people on that island, but it has a £250 billion a year financial industry. And if I can just tell you about the Sun, Sea and Satan, so we find these paedophilic statues, thank God they're down there, and apparently they've been up there for 5 years, but it was because of our work that they was taken down, and with the help of the good people of Jersey, because there are good people on Jersey. And then, just 2 miles, less than a mile from Haut de la Garenne, and this has never been reported, I've never heard this anywhere, there is a mental institution called St Saviour's. Now, that had the capacity for 600 beds in this mental institution. There was only 90,000 people on the fucking island, for God's sake, you know. And this place had excavation work done on it, 2 years, at the same time as Haut de la Garenne did, before the investigation started proper. Now, then we found witnesses that said when they was at Haut de la Garenne, the kids, they were told by the visiting psychiatrist, if you don't shut up making these allegations, you're going to wind up in a nut house, which was St Saviour's. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Haut de la Garenne on the island of Jersey was the venue if you wanted a child. If you wanted someone older than the child, an adult, say 17, 18 or whatever, then your venue was St Saviour's Mental Institution. No one is talking about that.
Well, that's why I wanted to get you on the show to explain some of this stuff. But right now I'm going to play the trailer. It's just a 2-minute edit of the trailer for Sun, Sea and Satan. So here it is.
Award-winning film director Bill Maloney was shooting a documentary on the streets of New York when he first heard about the investigation of child abuse and possibly murder at the Jersey Island children's home, Haut de la Garenne. Bill was brought up in the care of the British establishment, as were the rest of his family, all of whom were abused, be it physically, psychologically or sexually. Bill's decision to fly to Jersey on his return from New York came as no surprise to all of us here that work at Pine Mesh Films. In this documentary he tries to condense a bigger picture into the smaller frame that is often shown to the public. Or as Bill puts it, sometimes simple things can expose everything.
I'm wishing myself luck, I'm wishing Lily luck, I'm wishing Darren luck, and I'm wishing Pine Mesh Films luck in our quest to fully expose this horrific story. We're just a mile from Haut de la Garenne. You got it, Neil? You zoomed in on it?
Yep.
Now look at that strange face on that kid. And that kid is now, they've turned it round so it's holding its prick. This is a mile from Haut de la Garenne.
In 1868, St Saviour's Residential Mental Hospital was opened. In 1962, a child resident of Haut de la Garenne was told by a psychiatrist that if he repeated his allegations of sex abuse, he would be sent to the mental hospital.
Well, I don't think that killing children and torturing them once you've got them away from the safety of their parents. The UK doesn't own this island.
Well, not the UK, no, just Britain.
It's independent. The Crown.
Yeah.
The Queen.
Yeah.
The Queen?
Yeah.
This is where the Queen brings her money to avoid her taxes. This is very Masonic, this island, anyway. They're talking about initiation ceremonies for these and sacrificing children.
There you go, that was a trailer for Son, Sea and Satan. So tell us, Bill, tell us all about the making of that documentary and what you kind of exposed and uncovered in it.
Let me just give you an interesting fact on that. Let me just give you an interesting fact on that. That island is owned by the Queen. The Queen is the head of the Church of England, right?
Yeah.
Now, as the head of the Church of England, but 5 years ago it was made legal that you can now practice Satanism in Her Majesty's Royal Navy. So if she goes to church on Sunday, where the fucking hell does she go on Monday?
Interesting point, and I totally agree with you.
I mean, it's only a small thing, Tony, but how can you do that? How can you have the crown of, you know, the British Empire, the head of the Church of England, and now she's settling for Satanism being practiced in her Royal Navy. Now, we know how superstitious sailors are, you know what I mean? I don't think you're going to get on there and start doing satanic rituals and anyone's going to be too pleased about that. So why is it allowed?
Why do you think it's allowed?
Well, look at all our kings. They've all been in the Navy. Look at our princes. They've all been in the Navy.
And do you reckon there is Satanism within the British establishment?
Absolutely, and I believe that Haut de la Garenne is the tip of an iceberg and being used as a red herring. And I genuinely believe that. Now, Lenny Harper, our film Sun, Sea and Satan, and you know, our audience can get that from our website. And that is how people like us survive, by selling our films on our website, because distributors, the BBC, etc., won't have it. Now, after we finished the finished the film, so I'm going to get a little bit choky here on this one. My sister Diana, God rest her soul, who lived on the streets for 19 years because my family was completely decimated, they wouldn't tell us where we were or anything. She lived on the street for 19 years. And then she pulled herself together, I met her, I started looking after her, and then over about 3 years she pulled up. She was good, she was strong, and she said, when I came back from New York, I was telling her about Sun, Sea and Satan, she said, I want to fund that, Billy. She said, I'm going to give you the money to do that. She gave me £2,500 so that we could go out and make that film. It was myself, a girl called Lily Starr, who I mentioned, my camera woman, and a filmmaker in her own right, and my editor, and a guy called Garenne Barber. He was only 18, but the kid's a genius with notes, you know, and in the editing suite, that is what you want. So, and he done some really good interviews. So when we went, where was I? Trying to help me out, because
we're talking about Haut de la Garenne.
Right, so my sister funded this film. Now, when we came back, we edited the film. My sister was supposed to come out there, but there was shenanigans, so she couldn't get out there, because she almost had a breakdown. So then when we came back, I edited the film together, and we put it to every single major broadcasting company. They all sent, they didn't send the films back, but they all turned it down. Now and that was including the BBC, and we had a little bit of a row with the BBC over this as well, because what we were reporting was true, it was fact, but we had opened up new avenues for them, okay? Now, my sister, after that was presented to the BBC, 2 weeks later, my sister, Diana, was found dead in her apartment. Now, the coroner, we didn't know what happened. They said that she'd, it looked like she'd been drinking and she may have had some kind of seizure, etc. But when I started investigating, I discovered that she had been seen having a row with a man in the street, and 4 days before, approximately 2 days before she died, she was taken to hospital complaining that someone had punched her in the chest She was found on at the stairs at the bottom of her apartment. And none of this was investigated. But the coroner said to us, the coroner's assistant said, we're going to release the body now, we have everything we need. So we said, what do you mean? How did Diana die? And he said, well, we've got the liver, so the liver's fine, but the body is decomposed. But the liver's fine, so we will get our toxicology reports, etc., etc. But when we got into court, the liver, they said the liver was no good. It was browned. It was greyed, sorry. It was spongy, and they couldn't even tell if she'd had a drink. Now, the day that I went to my sister's inquest, a piece came out on Sun, Sea and Satan in the Irish World, a 2-page spread in the middle of the paper on the Irish World. That came out, and that was presented to the coroner, who went white. And then when I got home, before I went to the coroner's court, I received an email from Jersey Police requesting a copy of Sun, Sea and Satan. Now, we hadn't even released it, only to all the broadcasting networks, you know. Yeah. So I believe that was to say, we've got your son, and if you want to carry on, we'll do some more. Because I believe that my sister was murdered to try and throw me off of this work that I'm doing. And my films are gritty, and I do use expletives, and I am an angry man. But I'm also an honest man, and I'm proper, and I feel for the children. I don't just say, you know, like the guy earlier who's saying, oh, I'm not racist, I've got black mates. I was brought up around black people. When I say that kind of thing, I mean it. And when I think of the children, the satanic abuse, the rituals, you lot talk about Bilderberg. Now, I heard that Bilderberg accumulates with the offering up of a child to Satan, though it is only in a reconstruction form.
Cremation of Care, Bilderberg Grove, or Bohemian Grove, sir.
So if that's the fact, you know, and we're going very high, you know. This goes very high. Paedophiles, you know, need their kids. I believe that all those kids that were sent out to Australia, 500,000 of them, were sent out because the British Empire that was being built, they wanted white European kids because there weren't no kids out there. And that's what they were out there for, and they was all abused. And Gordon Brown has apologised for that. You know, apologies are no good. You know, these victims, me personally as a victim, I don't want revenge, I just want it to stop.
You mentioned the BBC there. I've got a clip of you chatting to Newsnight here. We're just going to play that, alright? Here we go.
Okay.
I think you're a man who speaks his mind.
I'm an honest man. Yeah. I'm a truthful man.
So what do you think?
Not like the BBC who keep pissing out the same 60 seconds over 24 hours. Or fucking... No, let's not leave it at one side. You can talk to me, I'll talk to you.
Okay, right, so what's your beef with the BBC then?
My beef with the BBC? Are you joking?
No, tell me what's your beef with?
Well, I don't like the way... The BBC are not reporting correctly. They're not going to the people. You're talking to me now, but your colleague here has been... Like I said, he's like a hawk on my shoulder. Was you at the bank yesterday as well? I think he was at the bank. Every time I started an interview, and I represent the lower working class culture, alright? And every time I had an interview, I got the BBC over my shoulder, or I got Sky over my shoulder. Why can't you go and talk to the people?
You talk to people.
Well, you're talking to me now, but, you know, only because I give you a right bollock in the pair of you.
There you go, that was you chatting nicely to the Newsnight, and I just wanted to ask you what, obviously we both have a bit of a beef with the BBC that they're not telling people the truth. What would you, if you could speak to the BBC right now, what would you say to them?
It's that bad word that you really can't use, you know what I mean? You can use fuck, bollocks and wanker, but there's one begins with K. I would call them all that, because I believe that the BBC are involved and know about paedophile rings, institutional paedophile rings that are operating in this country. If the BBC fuck with the paedophiles and the government, they're going to lose their money. And we give them £3.4 billion every year, exactly what the kids need.
And
that's my theory, you know. I really believe they're all in the same pot.
And the BBC are not really doing their job in a lot of issues. They're not reporting the full facts behind everything from the war to terrorism to, as you say, allegations of paedophilia in very high ranks.
It's like at the end, that interview you just played with me when I was having a go at the BBC on the street, because what that interview was about, Lily and I were filming at the G20. We've got a film, you can get that on our site as well, it's called the G20 Raw, it's great. We were doing that. Can I just, I'm rambling a little bit, but can I just go back to David Dimbleby?
Yeah, of course.
Right, so David Dimbleby, after we're in the green room, he said, that's a good question, that's a good question, write it down and we'll see what we can do. So I thought, cracking, this is great. Now I can talk about what I want to talk about, you know what I mean? I'm going to get a chance here. And as he went out, I shook hands with him. And as I shook hands with him, he looked very uncomfortable looking into my eyes. And I said to him, thank you, David. I said, I'm not here to sit and watch. I can do that at home. I'm here to ask a question. All I want to do is ask a question. He said, okay, that's fine, we'll see what we can do. Then an hour goes by, and next time we see him is in rehearsals. And David Dimbleby, it kicked off with, I think it was the guy who went down in the plane, Farage, the MP. He said, or was it Gove? It was Gove, sorry, they were on the panel. And David Dimbleby said, what are you doing, Mr. Gove, or Michael, whatever, is it Michael Gove? Michael, what have you been doing? He said, well, it's my wife's birthday today, and I bought her 4 presents. I got her 2 designer dresses and 2 others, which I'm not prepared to talk about. So I shouted down, I said, yeah, I said, we aren't paying for them, are we? And that got a laugh from the audience, you know. And then the other guy, Farage, he said, I can't remember what he said, but it was sort of very condescending, and I said, I don't know what you're being so flippant for, because you've all had your hands in the till. And then David Dimbleby, he leant towards me, you know, like the way he likes to point at people and talk like he's the headmaster and in charge of the fucking world. That's what he done to me. He said, if you can't control yourself, I'll have you ejected. I said, well, David, I said, you don't need to have me ejected. You tell me to go and I will go. And he said, no, I'm not saying you have to go. I said, well, if you want me to go, I will go. I said, but don't talk to me like I'm a piece of shit. And he said, I'm not. So then I said, I am here to talk about paedophile rings, institutional paedophile rings that are working in this country now. I also want to talk about restraining techniques that we're using against our young offenders, and I want to talk about the family courts where we're stealing children. And he said, right, I'm going to ask you to leave. And
they don't want to talk about...
the security guards come over, and Maria shouted about Hollie Greig.
Yeah.
And by the way, I spoke to Robert Greene last night, and he said they're feeling very strong, very positive, and you know, there's a lot of negative things being talked about. So you know, let's not concentrate on the negative, because you know, this is a very big establishment that Robert Greene, Anne, and Hollie. You just got to picture these 3 people sitting there trying to plan what they're going to do next. The fear that is going through these people. And there is the victim who cannot lie. So let's stick with them and don't question them. That's what I'm just saying. I know everyone's not doing it, but some people are. So I'd like to see that stop anyway.
And I think you've heard my interviews with Anne and Hollie, and then more recently with Mark Daly.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I'll tell you what, the BBC guy, he seemed like a frightened man to me, and I'm from the street, and I know when someone's got a little bit of fear or they're a little bit tentative. That's all I'll say on that, really, I think.
No worries. Now, your cabbie mate recorded Jack Straw in his taxi, and I've got the clip, but before I play it, can you please just tell us a bit of background on this one?
Well, yeah, this is, you know, when I first became a film director, I used to train actors, and one of these guys, his name's Grant, we'll just say Grant, and Grant is a black cab driver, and we became quite good mates, and he started getting a lot of work. You'd know his face probably if you saw him. He started getting a lot of work, but he got this job. You know, he supported us over like sort of all the years, and the Sun came to him with a job asking him that if he would drive their cab for a couple of weeks which was emblazoned with the sun, and ferry the politicians from one place to the next and ask them questions as a working class guy. So this is what he done. First, you know, he had camera, and he had Pickles and Nick Clegg, and then all of a sudden Jack Straw got into his car. But what had happened was Grant had seen something on my website, a question that he wanted, that made him so angry, something that we found out, he wanted to put it to Jack Straw. So he's talking to Jack, and he's giving him, you know, the la-di-da, bullshit, what are you going to do? Immigration, army, Iraq, da-da-da. Then all of a sudden he said, Jack, he said, the other day, a guy got into my cab. His name's Bill Maloney. He makes independent films, you know. He said, and Jack, he told me that last year you changed the law to say that children in care who are being abused, it is not now illegal for them to put that into the public domain, i.e. the media. So Jack said, no, well, you know, I do so many things that, you know, sometimes I have a memory lapse, and but I think I would have remembered that one. Tell him to email me. Well, then I read out a piece from the Times and a piece from the Independent that says Jack Straw did pass this law.
Well, we've got the clip now. We can actually hear the actual recording, so it's a couple of minutes long, but I'll play this clip. Here we go.
We have obtained the recording, the audio recording, but not the video recording. Now I'm going to play you that video recording of Jack Straw and what my mate asked him.
I've got to ask you another question, Jack. Funny enough, yesterday I was in the cab. I picked up a film.
Was it a proper one?
A proper cab, yeah. I was in my cab working, and I had a guy in the cab, and he's a very independent, Bill Maloney's name. He makes little independent films and stuff. And I didn't realise he's working on one now about child abuse, and I didn't realise, he said to me to say to you, why in 2009 you made it illegal or for any children in care to speak out about being ill-treated. Did you do that, Jack?
No.
He said that was something to do with you, and I said, I've got you. He said, oh, Jack Straw, he made it illegal. Children in care to speak out. I said, well, I'll ask him that tomorrow.
One gets involved in so much that occasionally you have memory lapse, but I think I remember that. I don't remember. I mean, amongst thereof, it's not my own responsibility. And actually, I don't know where it's coming from, because one of the things I've been doing is to try and open up the family courts where a lot of these issues get argued about, and so that people, the press will not be able to report the names of the kids or therefore their parents, but they would be able to say, well, this is a really odd decision. And I've had, frankly, a very big fight with some of the people in the family courts and the children's organisations who want family justice, so-called, to remain a secret garden. So I can say to him, that I don't know what he's talking about, but if he cares to send me an email, I'll try to
you ask it. Yeah. Jack, I know you're a big Blackburn fan.
Thank you.
The Independent and the Times tell us Jack Straw was responsible for this. But as you just heard, Jack has had a lapse of memory because of all the different things he's involved in. He has had a lapse of memory. He has made it possible now that children cannot say, I'm being abused, I'm doing this, and put it into the public arena. And he's just told a London cabbie, a mate of mine, that you have all just listened to, I can't remember. No, I don't think I did do that. Remember that? I don't know. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. Well, Jack, you may not know what I'm talking about, but the fucking Independent knows what I'm talking about, and the Times knows what I'm talking about, and the victims of this country, and their siblings, and their parents, and their families know what I'm talking about, Jack. But you don't know what I'm talking about, Jack.
There you go. Bill, excellent work on that one. What exactly did Jack Straw's law do, and what was his excuse for passing this bill?
Well, what only passed the bill, but then it really is just to keep it quiet. And that is it. Because these kids that are taken into care, you know, it's like young offenders institution, if they're training, right? Now, these young offenders institutions are owned by utility companies like Serco. Now, if we look at Medemsley, because that is the film that I'm just about to release, which is Adam Rickwood and the Medemsley Heroes, if they get £200,000 a year per child. Now, these kids are all from the lower working classes. You know, it's like the foster carers. The foster carers now, so we've got the lower working classes kids being taken away as babies because Martin Neri of Dr. Bernardo's, you know, the chief executive, says we've got to take them away as babies. Then the middle class women are getting hold of them and they're paying their fucking mortgages with these kids because they're taking them away from mothers that are living on like £100 a week and in poverty-stricken areas, and the middle classes are taking them and getting starting at £380 a week to foster a child. And if the child has learning difficulties or whatever they say, you know, or a disability, then that can go up to a lot more, £1,500. Now, you go and get these kids, and then you get yourself a little Polish girl or a little Albanian girl, and they'll look after your 2 or 3 kids that you're fostering, and then you do what you want to do. It is government-funded child abuse, and the fosters, the private foster companies, don't even have to tell the council where they're fostering kids to, where the homes are. Can you believe that?
We've got, I spoke about her before, but we've had Maureen Spalek on the show once already, and we're hoping to have her on again. I was actually talking to her today. What do you make of her case in that she's a loving mother that's had her kids taken off her and she ended up in jail for saying that?
Maureen is one of many. You know, I don't think we're talking about thousands here. I think we're going into the hundreds of thousands, and kids that have been abused in the past, millions, you know. And in my work with Adam Rickwood, when I talk to victims, I like them to show their face. You know, Adam Rickwood and the Medemsley Heroes. Now, the Medemsley Heroes were victims of a guy called Neville Husband. Now, the place they were at was called Medemsley. It was a detention centre. And this guy had been there for 17 years, Neville Husband, and he had been sadomasochistically fucking kids and torturing them from the time he was there. And Martin Neri was then in the prison service. Now, eventually, Neville Husband was told to leave Medemsley, and he went to work in an establishment where Neri was, and Neri had full knowledge that Neville Husband had been bringing in pornographic literature, etc., into the establishment. Now, all these guys, they're around about 45, 47 now, and they started talking to me, and I spent a lot of time with these guys, weeks. I went up north, you know what I mean? You know, they showed themselves. They showed themselves when they was drunk. They showed themselves when they were coherent. They showed themselves when they were happy, when they were sad. And that is what I'd like to say to all abuse victims out there. The more of you that come forward and don't hide your faces, I know it is a very, very difficult thing to do. But the more that come forward, so more will come forward, and we will really see the scale of this absolute outrage that is going on in our country and all over Europe.
I agree with you, and Bill, it's great picking your brains tonight, and I really appreciate you joining me. Anything else you'd like to talk about before you go?
Well, I would like to, if I could. There was a friend of mine, and her partner, and her name is Liz. Hello, Liz, if you're listening. Now, on Friday, Liz was a victim of abuse. On Friday, Liz's son, Stephen Scott Purcell, was found dead in a Canterbury toilet in Kent with a needle by his side, and she actually gave birth to her son while handcuffed as a young woman. And if I could just say, justice for survivors, Richard Hall and the Medemsley Heroes, Carol Pounder, Adam Rickwood's mum and her family, Forward Ever UK, whose campaign who campaign and raise issues of deaths and abuse whilst in UK custody. I'm speaking at their remembrance event in Leicester next Saturday on the 15th of May. Teresa Cooper, number 2 abuse, also the author of a book called Pin Down. Sheena, you know who you are, Sheena, and Sheena fights against forced adoptions. Ex-Senator Stuart Sivray from Jersey, and retired police investigator Lenny Harper, and all the many supporters on the island of Jersey who are still fighting for the abused children of Haut de la Garenne. I've got the producer here, she's just prompting me, and one, I had to, my family, I want to mention my family, and the one person who I couldn't make these films with is a young woman who lost custody of 3 children, and she's worked with me for 4 years, and her name is Lily Starr, and everything you see she shoots and edits, and you know, I've seen the girl with bumps and lumps and cuts on her faces in predicaments that we've had to go into to get this work out there. And just one other thing, if I can, Tony, I would like to say to all you people who are listening, you know, I apologise for the bad language, but I am very angry because I'm in the middle of a couple of major pieces of work. So you know, I'll always talk to you like it is, and that is one thing I can guarantee. And you can support this by buying our films, because we need to survive. I am a film director, and I did have the opportunity to go and make the big bucks, but I didn't follow the money. I stayed true to victims, and I believe that I will be doing this for the rest of my life, however long that may be.
And do you want to shout out the contact details for Pie and Mash Films?
Yeah, it's pieandmashfilms.com.
There you go. Bill Maloney, thanks so much for your time. Keep up the good work.
And God bless all survivors and victims. Thank you very much, Tony. I've enjoyed myself.
No worries, Bill. Thank you very much, sir.
God
Take it
bless
easy.
you, bye.
All right. There goes, folks. Bill Maloney, absolute legend.